chat about what else we might stick in there.
Yeah,
Okay?
I was thinking the
Yeah,
same
so
thing.
that it's not the same one all the time.
Yeah, something I can just transition.
You're doing a great job though with your improvisation. It sounds
Yeah,
good.
a little variety.
Yeah,
That
a
would
little
be-
organ skills, yes.
second. We're just having some connection problems with the internet.
Shalom, friends and family, everyone who's joining us in person and at home live this evening. You'll notice I have a new mic set up this evening. It's a little bit louder than the one that we've been using in the past. And in addition, we have running live today in conjunction with Facebook Live, YouTube Live. If anyone's having difficulty connecting to the YouTube Live feature, you can always stream the service now on YouTube too. So, with those opening words and comments, I would like to welcome Shabbat to this community, to everyone at home listening and watching, and welcome. So our service will begin on page 2 of our Siddurim, page 2. Page 2. Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvah, commanding us to kindle the lights of Shabbat. Continue on page 8. I begin with a prayer of gratitude for all that is holy in my life. God needs no words, no English or Hebrew, no semantics, and no services, but I need them. Through prayer, I can sense my inner strength, my inner purpose, my capacity to reach for love. As I reach upwards in prayer, I sense these qualities in my Creator. To love God is to love each other, to work to make our lives better. To love God is to love the world God created and to work to perfect it. To love God is to love dreams of peace and joy that illuminate us and to bring that vision to life. Continue on page 10, Lakini Matov.
Hine matov manahim, sheret achim gam yachad. Hine matov manahim, sheret achim gam yachad. Hine matov, sheret achim gam yachad. Hine matov, sheret achim gam yachad. Hine matov manahim, sheret achim gam yachad. Hine matov manahim, sheret achim gam yachad.
How good and how pleasant it is that brothers and sisters dwell together. We'll continue on page 12 of Lechune Ranena.
Lechune ranena, lechune ranena, lechune ranena l'Adonai. Lechune ranena, lechune ranena, lechune ranena l'Adonai. Naria, naria, letzor yishenu, lekarma fana betodah. Naria, naria, letzor yishenu, bishmiro naria lo. Lechune ranena, lechune ranena, lechune ranena l'Adonai. Lechune ranena, lechune ranena, lechune ranena l'Adonai.
Come, let us sing joyously to Adonai, raise a shout for our rock and deliverer. Let us come into God's presence with praise. Let us raise a shout for God in song, for Adonai is a great God, the great ruler of all divine beings. In God's hand are the depths of the earth, the peaks of the mountains are God's. God's are the sea, God made it, and the land of which God's hands fashioned. Come, let us bow down and kneel, bend the knee before Adonai our Maker, for Adonai is a great God, and we are the people who God tends to, the flock of God's care. Oh, if you would heed God's charge on this day. Continue on page 24 with Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hashamayim, Malachei Elyon. Melech, Malachei Hamalachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Malachei Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei
Continue on page 28. Please rise. Baruch Hu. praise is due forever. Praise be Adonai, to whom praise is due, now and forever. You may be seated. We continue with the Shema on page 35. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kehod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Continue with the V'ahavta on 36. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levacha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha u'letecha v'derech u'shafecha u'vkumecha u'shartam me'od al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'b'isharecha Leman tizkeru v'asitem ekom mitzvotai v'ditem kirushim elechem Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeti etchem mi'eretz Mitzrayim v'yot lechem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Emet. Continue on page 37. Love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind these words I command you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work, whether you are tired or you are rested. Let them guide you, guide the work of your hands. Keep them at the forefront of your vision. Do not leave them at the doorway of your house or outside of your gate. They are reminders to do all my mitzvot, so that you can be holy for your God. I am Adonai your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai your God. Continue on page 39, the translation for Emet Ve'emunah. Standing on the parched shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before we ever stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Continue on page 40 with Nichanocha.
Oh
Continue on page 43, the translation for Hashkidei. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, ha-pores sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Continue on page 44 with Bishamru. Bishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'doretam b'ri olam. Bishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'doretam b'ri olam. B'nei Yisrael oti le'olam, oti le'olam, oti le'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'doretam b'rit olam. Ki shet yamin asa Adonai et ha-shamayim v'et ha'aretz. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'doretam b'rit olam. Ubayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'doretam b'rit olam. Now join together for page 46 for Tefillah. Please rise. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufia kiteilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu Elohei Avotinu ve'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Hasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Hase'avot V'imachot, U'mevi Gula Livnei Bneihem, Leman Shemo V'Yahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor L'Olam Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol Atara V'Choshia, Morid Hatzah, Mekakel Hayim B'Chesed, Mechayeh HaKol V'Rachamim Navi. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשמי עפר, מחמוך בגבורות, ומדום אליו, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. You are holy, your name is holy, and those who are holy praise you every day. Blessed are you, Adonai, the holy God. You may be seated. We continue on page 55. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. May this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-Shabbat. Continue on page 58. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulcha na'eh v'hodot. We continue on page 70 with Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha, Hasidim Le'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha, Hasidim Le'olam. Yadav Melech Adon, Le'ol HaShalom.
Grant abundant peace to Israel, your people forever, for you are the sovereign God of all peace. We now have a few moments of silent meditation and prayer. Continue on page 62 with Oseh Shalom.
Oh, say shalom b'roma, say shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. 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 Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
May the one who creates peace in the high heavens make peace for us, for all Israel and all who inhabit the earth, and we say together, Amen. Just a moment, we'll be turning to our Misheberach prayer. I have a list of names that have been provided to me from community. I'd like to ask, after the names have been read aloud, if there are any additional requests for names to be read, for anyone who would need a healing of mind, body, and or of spirit. For today, we have the following names: Ashley Blair, Joyce Cahill, Renee Lieb Chandler, Harav Shmuel and Kahat Bekrenbo, Chanashira Bat Yisrael Befega, Marty Foster, Michelle Kravkin-Gary, Mills Heck, Gerald Kent, Vicki Kent, Barbara Kibben, Lexi McCrae, Harold Osborne, Jonathan Paris, Miguel Ponyman, Vivian Ponyman, Debbie Provisor, Colton Robinson, Maxine Schiffman, Linwood Spires, Steve Watson, Amy Webb, Ashley Lotena, Mark Funk, Patty Early, Hermina Levy, Kay Witt, Connie Bullard, Deborah Blanchard, Christy Solomon, Karen Lombard, Dotsie Pomerantz, Dick Engelberg, Marsha Rhodes, Randy Krakenpool, Jerry Narblett, Murray Solomon. Are there any additional name requests from anyone in our community here today? Mitchell Belinsky. Are there any other additional name requests? I'll check our online audience as well. I don't see any additional name requests on the service. So with these names in our mind, we will now enter into the Misheberach prayer on page 253.
Source of strength, who bless the ones before.
So before we enter into our Torah discussion or sermon for this evening, we're going to offer a final Misheberach for those who serve our country in uniform. Misheberach l'chomeinu Yeshua v'David Devori Ya'el Yehudi Yivarech et Chayilenu. May the one who blessed our warriors of old, Joshua and David, Devori Ya'el and Judith, bless and watch over our dear ones who are in the service of our country and our dear ones who serve in the defense of the state of Israel. Although it is we who send them into harm's way, we pray that you lead them safely on their missions and bring them home to their loved ones in wholeness and in health. Be a source of comfort to their families, and bless them too with patience, courage, and strength, to which we say, Amen. Good Shabbos, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Our Torah reading for today is Hazinu from Deuteronomy chapter 32. It's a powerful reading. It's the very end of Deuteronomy, the end of our Torah. It's the epic closing words of Moses to the people of Israel. Hazinu means listen in. And this reading, the words of today, were delivered to the people of Israel on Moses' final day. The words are poetic, and our sages teach that they are so significant that they belong to a group of 10 songs that appear in our Torah, in our Tanakh. Hazinu is not only poetic, but it is also prophetic. Moshe's final words are an ominous warning regarding the people of Israel's next several hundred years of existence. Moses' message to the people of Israel is this: yes, we have reached the promised land, but we are not totally out of the woods. At the beginning of Deuteronomy chapter 32, in Hazinu, Moses says that God guided the people of Israel through the wilderness out of Egypt, cared for them, and kept them the apple of God's eye. In the verses that continue in chapter 32 of Deuteronomy, Moses then foretells what will come for the people of Israel upon entering into the land and forsaking God. They would sacrifice unto demons, unto new gods, unto idols. And as a result of this sacrilege, God will hide God's face in an act known as Hester Panim from the people of Israel, and a generation will inherit faithlessness as a result. God will then heap evil upon the generations to follow, and horrible things will befall them upon entering into the land. There's a lot going on in these verses: prophecy, poetry, and song. In addition, theological concepts appear inserted into the text themselves. And one theological concept that is referred to again and again is Hester Panim, the shyness of God's face. In the face of Sinat Hinam, of baseless hatred, God's face became absent. The shyness of God's face has been used to describe multiple calamities and catastrophes of our Jewish history. Two leading Jewish theologians from the period of the Shoah, of the Holocaust, named Rabbi Kalman Shapira and Zelig Kalmanovich, they used this concept to understand the catastrophe that befell the Jews of Europe during the 1940s. Both Rabbi Shapira and Zelig Kalmanovich preached on the subject of Hester Panim from their pulpits deep inside of the Warsaw Ghetto during the 1940s. For Rabbi Kalman Shapira, the author of the Theodicy, Eish Kodesh, he believed God's desire to mourn the catastrophe in private caused God to retreat during the entirety of the Second World War. According to Rabbi Shapira, there is a concept of human-divine partnership in suffering. God's presence, or even absence, in the face of these calamities that befell us, was limited for the following reason: God's desire to mourn in privacy from catastrophes. As Rabbi Shapira understood this best during the Second World War, God was the object of attack by the Germans, and because of God's association with the Jewish people, we all suffered. Zelig Kalmanovich took a very similar approach in his theodicy. Not only did God retreat during war, but God's absence was the result of an attack upon a sacred triad, the Torah, Israel, and God, by the Germans. According to Kalmanovich, as preached from deep inside the Warsaw Ghetto in the 1930s into the 1940s, we would not be destroyed so long as the Jews affirmed their place in the sacred triad. Even though the Germans may be successful or capable of destroying one arm of that triad, our bodies, they would never prevail against moral law or the creator of the universe. Both Kalmanovich and Shapira suggested Chester Panim as a theological explanation of how the Holocaust, how the Shoah could happen. But I struggle with this. Why does a just and compassionate God simply stand idle and watch people as they perish? Holocaust theology may better elucidate the concept of Chester Panim, but the theology is difficult to connect with or to stomach. Wars, they can be prevented. Genocides, they can be prevented. Murders can be prevented. Crimes, all crimes can be prevented. Such tasks require our hard work to stop. We can't play an inactive role in this duty as Jews. It is our sacred duty to side with people and organizations that work to protect human rights and victims while being a voice for peace in the world. In working with congregants and ourselves, we must not lose faith in the goodness of our humanity. We must always strive for a better tomorrow. Deep theological explanations that address Chester Panim will not alone ever cut it for myself. We need to play an active role in this world. The message of Chester Panim should read, we can control our own future if we listen in as we are called upon in this week's Torah portion with Chazinu. Rabbi Sabbath Beit Halachmi, a teacher of mine, she picked up on this nuance in one of her sermons, one of her drashot that she shared with myself earlier when I had been working in a rabbinic capacity at Adat Israel of Cincinnati. In her writings, in her drash, Rabbi Sabbath Beit Halachmi wrote, in much of Deuteronomy, God has been portrayed as the mighty Redeemer, the supreme warrior who leads the people of Israel into battle, and the one who reveals Torah with thundering skies and threats of conditional covenant. Rabbi Sabbath, in her sermon, though, wrote that in Hazinu, God is depicted as the rock, the source of justice, and any imperfections or problems in the world are because of human imperfections. because of human error and not because of God. So let's highlight that. Any imperfections in this world are because of human imperfections, not because of God. These words really underscore the responsibility of ourselves. Hazinu is about this message. Yes, we have reached the promised land, but we are not totally out of the woods. We cannot leave the rest of the journey up to God, God's self. We may be in Israel, we may be in Columbus, Georgia, or wherever we find ourselves, but idolatry still blinds us, baseless hatred still ravages us, and catastrophe still causes us all to suffer. The message of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Moses, our teacher, remains relevant today as in antiquity. We are called just as much today as then to hazinu, to listen in. The act of listening calls upon us to act, not to play an inactive role in our creation, in our world. We cannot control our own, we can control our own future. If we listen in, as we are called upon, in hazinu. Ken yehi ratzon. We will continue with our service on page 282. With the Elena, please rise. Thus it has been said, Adonai will be sovereign over all the earth, and on that day Adonai will be one, and God's name will be one. You may be seated. Continue with an English reading on page 285. Let the time not be distant, O God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when superstition shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye, when we all created in your image become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled. Adonai will reign forever and ever. Now turn to page 288 in a short meditation before the mourner's Kaddish. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that way to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. If you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that is left of me is love, give me away. I've been provided several names from our Yartzeit list of today. I will read these names aloud, and if there are any additional requests from our community, either virtually or in person, I'll ask for anyone to share those names with us. Recently deceased, we have Rudy Langer, Betty Carafi, Weinberger, Laurel Brooks, Melvin Saloff. Our Yartzeits for today continue with the following names: Jeffrey Siegel, Leslie Lilienthal Jr., L.B. Rosenzweig, Frank Lintner, Jeanette Loeb Lazarus, Shia Ved, Leonard Weintheimer Jr. Is there any additional names from our community for today?
Candida Martinez. Candida Martinez.
Can you say one more time?
Candida.
Carmila? Candila Martinez? Thank you. Abraham Brown. And Mark Brown. Are there any additional names? I'll check our virtual audience as well. Don't see anyone else. Okay. Well, with those names in mind, we will now enter into the Kaddish prayer. Page 294. Please rise if it is your custom. Yitkadal, v'yitkadash, shanei rabbah, v'yalma, v'yirat, v'yirutei, v'yamlech malchutei, v'chayachon, v'yomechon, v'chayed, v'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agala, v'izman kariv, v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabban v'barach, le'olam olamei almaya. Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitbarar, v'yitraman, v'yitnasei, v'yitadar, v'yitalel, v'yitalal, shemei v'rishad rechu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damram yalma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'ramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May with our memories always be a blessing, and let us say amen. You may be seated. We'll join together on page 322 for Ein Kelehenu. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Yadoneinu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mi Keloheinu, Mi Chadoneinu, Mi Kemalkeinu, Mi Kemoshienu, No Dele Eloheinu, No Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshiachenu. Now do the blessing for the wine. We'll do the short blessing here, and then we'll do the all the continued blessings outside today in the meeting area right outside the front door. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Praise to you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. And we'll join outside in just a moment for the blessing over the challah and the full blessing for the wine. We'll see everyone very shortly, so welcome and see you soon.